Good evening, everyone. My name is Carlo Cruz, and I will be pretty much rushing through this presentation because I have a lot to talk about, and I want to get to the code examples more than anything. We good? So here we are. I'm just going to start this slideshow. This is, okay. Let's press this button. Slideshow, start from the first slide. Why is it doing that? You know what? Let's just go with this. Nah, it's fine. You can just imagine it. So this is the Slido link for those who need questions. Like I said, my name is Carlo Cruz, and I will be talking to you about Svelte and Sveltekit. Has anyone heard of Svelte or Sveltekit before? Has anyone used it? Used it? No one? Tried it? Okay, cool. I love web developing. I grew up in it. I've been doing it for over 15 years, and I love JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. My one concern for today's modern frameworks is that it's sort of forcing you to do it their way. So for example, in React, they force you to create components in the React way. It's fine, but I'm not a big fan of it. And hopefully Svelte, I will show you how Svelte will overcome that and bring you back to the more vanilla way of web development. Why Svelte? Easy to understand, compiles to it actually has a compiler that compiles all your Svelte code into vanilla JS, so it leaves very little Svelte code behind. It has built-in accessibility checking, styling within the components are scoped. It has server-side variable protection, so that if you set a variable in a specific place that's only meant to be server-side, it won't let you use it in the client side. It'll error out. The server, on initial load of your Svelte application, it'll render server-side, but on subsequent loading, on navigation around of your application, it'll actually do client-side for the rest. It has built-in animations. I won't be covering all of this, but these are some of the features that it can do. Now, Svelte and Sveltekit. Svelte is pretty much the front end of the Sveltekit. So it's sort of like the React to the Next.js. So in Sveltekit is the Next.js of it. So within Sveltekit, you will do API calls, database calls, things like that. And Svelte is pretty much your HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Now to the code examples. I am going to show you what a basic Svelte component looks like. This is specific to Svelte 5, which was released 2 months ago. So any older Svelte tutorials that you have or will see, that have been released may look a bit differently, but because that's using Svelte 4 code, and this is Svelte 5 specific. So here we are. That's pretty good size, maybe a bit bigger. So here we are. So chapter 1. This is what a basic Svelte component looks like. You'll have your script tags, which contain your JavaScript, and then within this component, you have your HTML down below. So as you can see up here, we have this funny variable called $state. This is basically what makes the variable count reactive. This is pretty much the only bit of code you need to make Svelte watch for changes for this count variable. As you can see here, I don't have a set count function to update it or anything like that. I just basically change the variable. That is what I like about Svelte. It is very much like developing in vanilla JavaScript. I will show you this example. So hopefully it loads. Yeah. So this is my little basic Svelte. So chapter 1, so increment and decrement, right? So very, very basic functionality of Svelte. And we haven't written anything too funky or anything like Svelte related. Just that one line, and everything else is reactive. And we can see down here at the bottom here, on click, increment. Like that's fairly straightforward. There's other, so this $ state is built in within the Svelte language. So when I told you earlier that Svelte compiles into vanilla JS, this is inherently within the Svelte language. So you don't need to import it or anything, it's just there. And this is a rune, a Svelte rune, basically a magic function that will allow these reactivity. Now, other runes include derived and effect. Don't have time. You'll figure it out later if you're interested. It's fine. What was I up to? Okay, so components. So Svelte. So this is a Svelte component, but if you were to create components within components, that is also very possible. So in chapter 2, it is basically the same functionality, but we have an import count from a count.svelte component. Now, this can be seen here. So this is the contents of that component file, count.svelte. Basically, we were just replacing that piece of text with this component and adding a bit of styles to it. And like I said earlier, these styles are localized specifically to this component. So if we jump into here and go to chapter 2, as you can see, only that component has that style. So it's very enclosed and things like that. And it still works as you want. And if you did want to make things global from that component, you would add a global p tag. Oh, sorry. So if you were to change this to, oh my God, my anxiety is through the roof. Live coding at its peak. So p tag blue, right? Great. Yeah. Oh no, please, I'm not that amazing. And chapter 3, logic blocks, right? So what are we without logic blocks in our HTML? So in chapter 3, the basic logic, it's basically the same functionality, but in the HTML, we have things like if count equals 3, then display this, otherwise display this. Fairly basic. Here's an example. Back 3. So count is not 3, count is 3, right? Fairly basic. And as you can see here, the p tag, the global p is still assigning here because all the p tags are now still blue. Okay. Now let's get to something more complicated and something that is both Sveltekit and Svelte. All of the previous examples have been pretty much just plain Svelte. This is where things get a bit complicated. How much time do I have left? Yeah, 7 minutes. Great. Okay, we'll figure it out. So Sveltekit has specific naming conventions for its files that have magical abilities. Like plus page.svelte in Sveltekit is pretty much its index.html file. Plus page.js is basically the file that you use that is assigned to that index.html file that can be client-side or server-side, can be accessed by either side. Plus page.server is server-side, and server.ts is pretty much only all server-side. So basically anything with a server on it can only be accessed by server-side, which also brings me back to the variable protection. So if you had variables that all can only be accessed server-side, you can only access them in these two server-side files and not in the other two. It wouldn't let you, it would error out. Now, I'm going to show you a basic example of a form, basic username and login. What I like about Svelte and Sveltekit, you know what, actually, I'm going to take you through the directory of how a SvelteKit project looks like. So it's basically a folder-based routing system. So in the source folder, you have a routes folder, which is basically pretty much your folders in your website. So if you can see in my example, chapter 4, sorry, it's a bit fast, chapter 4. And right here, we have a page that's, page.svelte, which is the index file, which is basically everything that will be contained on this page. Now I only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to zoom past that. And what I enjoy about SvelteKit and its forms is that it treats it as forms and not sort of like a pseudo API call that I see React doing a lot, where you intercept the form data and then post it, not post it, but like just fetch it into, no, you post it, you do post it into an API endpoint of some sort. Now, by default, forms are treated as post data. So as you can see here, I will also open up my console just to show you something, to prove something later. So when I submit this form login, I see that was a form fail because obviously invalid data, and nothing came up in my console. But if I go to my page.svelte, this form posts to !/login, which is an action on this page in the server.ts. This may seem like a bit of a stretch, but stick with me, right? So the login is here, and these are the actions. So these are form actions that are associated with that page.svelte. And this is pretty much what it does. So we take the request with the form data and the console log it out. So you can imagine that you can do whatever you want in this form setup. You could even like post it somewhere else. And if you wanted to do client-side validation, well, that you could do that by prevent vaults and then posting it to here afterwards. But you see that console log, it wasn't in the browser because this is server-side code, so we can only see it on our running instance. So that's pretty neat. And that's pretty much a quick run through of Svelte and its basics and functionality. I would go in depth further, but time is running out. So yeah, so if there's any questions, this is this little course, the code is available at my GitHub, Svelte course. If you want to email me specific questions, email me. I get so lonely. So just like positive affirmations would be great. I mean, so yeah. Is there any questions?
Well, first a clap, no?
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, look, Carlo, I think that the first positive affirmation that we can tell you is that I have a lot of questions.
Oh, okay, great.
So let's start from the beginning, right?
Sure, please.
M says, what do you think, Carlo, of web components and frameworks like WebAwesome that focus on the presentation and leave the interactivity for the developer to decide?
Good question. I don't have an answer because I think these tools were created for reasons. Just because I don't see what the specific reason is for that tool, that doesn't mean it's not good or bad. I just think that I can't see a use case for it. To be honest, I don't know how to answer that question. I'm just rambling right now and trying to cover my bases.
You can normally say, oh, that's a very interesting question. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah.
I have to sleep on it. Next question. That will work. Another question.
Sure. Okay, good. These are hard questions. Please continue.
Oh, man. What's your take on runes replacing the reactive let statements from Svelte 4? I personally like the previous simplicity of the let statements better.
I agree. I prefer the, just for anyone who doesn't know, you used to be able to just, instead of having this state, you used to just be able to do this and count would be reactive immediately in Svelte 4. Now they want to runify it in this case. I prefer it the old way, but I can see why they made it this way, because if you do it this way, you can actually use this state functionality outside of .svelte files, so inside of just .ts files or .js files. And I can see why they did it, and I get it, but I prefer it the old way. But this is the way these people tend to know better than I do with these things, because their use cases are broader than my specific use case. I just make brochure sites with Sveltekit and React, which is overkill for most things. So yeah.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Yeah, as many as you want.
I'm gonna put them a little bit together.
Yeah, go for it.
In what situations or use cases would you use Svelte over other options? This question references this idea of differences between React, maybe where.
In my opinion, React for most cases is overkill. The reason why people use React, in my opinion, is that it was best on market at the time. There was no other alternative. Your option was Angular 2 or React. I'd used React because it's simpler at the time, but now there are better options, like for example, Svelte. Like for simple websites, use Svelte. React is way overkill for most applications. For most brochure sites, yeah, Svelte is fine.
Connected to this last thing,
Yep.
Do you have an indication of the limit on how large a project would be suitable for using Svelte?
Not from my knowledge. I don't have a limit. I mean, from the documentation and the way it's proceeding, I think it could handle quite large websites. If you want a single page application, I would use React or Angular, sure. But if you have a website or a web application that have very specific pages, Svelte would work much better, in my opinion. And it's much easier to understand.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'll risk a last one.
Oh, please do. No, let's go.
If forms are post data by default, and the issue you had with React's way was post like fetch API calls, what's the advantage?
Good question. I like to do things the way HTML seems to have deemed it quote unquote correct. Like it's not a better, I want to phrase it very carefully because I don't want to be like killed on the internet. Yeah, it's I guess a sense of progressive enhancement. If this is all you need, then Sveltekit provides that for you. And React probably, from my knowledge, I'm not a React expert, React doesn't do the posting, the form post as a default. Because if that's all you need, then that's all you need. You don't need to do prevent defaults and then do service client-side validation and then server-side validation. If post data is all you want, then why not just use that?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Carlo. Oh, good job.